Hello, and thank you so much for following along as I show you how to decorate this super cute gingerbread cookie set for Christmas. We're starting off with these two gumdrop cookies. We're going to do the exact same technique on both cookies. You just outline the cookies and then flood the cookies. This icing I'm using was a little on the thick side, so I was really having to work it, but that's okay with this because we're going to cover them with icing sugar here in just a minute. So I like my flood icing to be about a 12 to 15 second flood on average. Again, I'm just pulling the icing to the edge to help prevent overflow. Next, I just took some white icing sugar, sprinkled it in the bottom of this paper plate, and I'm gently dropping the cookie onto the sugar sprinkles. You want to let your flood sit for about 3 or 4 minutes before you do this part. Otherwise, the icing sprinkles won't sit on top of the flood, but they will absorb into it. This next cookie is our little gingerbread boy. I love outlining the eyeballs because then they are perfectly symmetrical and in the same exact spot. I'm going to go ahead and outline everything with my true brown from the Sugar Art. And then once that's done, I will go ahead and flood in the whole center section with true brown. When you're going around the eyes, be careful not to overflow to where your icing's going into the little round part. It is okay if it goes in a little bit because we will be filling that in with black later. And those little circles are merely meant to hold the place as to where our eyeballs will go. So once we've filled in the flood, I'm just using my scribe tool to make sure that the flood evens out nicely and is pulled towards the edge of my outlines. So once you're done with this part, just let the gingerbread boy crust over and then you can finish the rest of the details. I'm using a hybrid outline black here for my eyeballs. You can really use any consistency for this part that you want since we've created the little holes for the eyeballs. And then I'm going to take a little bit of white outline icing to make little dots on the eyes for reflection marks and give them just a little bit more character. And I'm using my outline blue icing to create the detail of this little bow. You could flood it in and then take outline on top of it to create detail as well. I just like to do it this way because it's simple and quick. Then I'm using my red outline icing to create little dots. And to finish him off, I thought it was really cute to actually outline the entire cookie with white outline icing. You don't have to outline the entire gingerbread with the white if you don't want to. I just personally thought it gave it more of a traditional gingerbread cookie look rather than a decorated sugar cookie look with brown icing. Either way is super cute though. And one final bit of outline icing over the head and adding a couple little pink cheeks right here. You'll see me do it a different way with a little girl. You can do the eyes where you just pipe the eyes on the top of the cookie, or you can create the little round circles the way I did. And here I'm showing you how to do cheeks, just piping little circles on top of the cookie, a smiley face and two little eyebrows, and your gingerbread boy is done. Oh, and a nose. Next we have our gingerbread girl. You're going to see me do a couple of things a little bit differently here. I'm going to go ahead and outline her with my brown outline icing all around the areas where I will be piping in brown flood. I'm doing my little circles for the eyes and just outlining the outsides of her arms and legs. I'm not going to outline all the length of the dress yet. I'll do that with her dress color. But if you wanted to save time, you could outline everything in brown and just fill in the colors with your pink icing or whatever color you decide to make her dress. I'm adding a second outline on these leg portions because I'm afraid that my icing will overflow. And these little squiggles are done to help prevent craters in smaller areas that are more prone to cratering. I didn't do that on the gingerbread boy because he was all solid brown, where she is going to have a different color for her dress. So here I'm filling in carefully her face, again to avoid the little circles for her eyes as much as possible. Scribing this so it's nice and flat. And then see, I've done the cheeks differently this time. I've added just some flood pink right underneath each eyeball to create her cheeks. And now I'm filling in the arms and legs. Next, on this little gingerbread girl, you'll see me do her eyes a little differently. I'm filling in with black flood icing while the brown face icing was still wet, and I didn't really care for the end results. So here I'm going on top of the flooded black area that is crusted over and just filling in some black dots to make her eyes stand out a little bit better. I'm going to go ahead and fill in her dress. I'm outlining everything in my pink, and then I'll fill in with flood icing pink. Again, this icing's very thick, so I'm having to scribe it, but it will all work out in the end. Next, I'm taking my red outline icing to fill in her bow. I thought it would be cute to just make a little round circle for the bow, but the icing kind of flooded together a little bit and just looked like it had craters, so I ended up filling in the red bow later. Here I'm creating a little sash detail on her dress, just slowly so that I get the look that I'm looking for. And I'm adding in icing to bring it down just a little bit. I'm working with it. And then just scribing it down a little bit more to give it the shape I want. And then adding a couple of red dots with outline flood. And to give this dress a little bit more character, I'm outlining the dress in red. It really helps it stand out and ties it in with the red bow that is on her head as well. Now I'm going to go ahead and outline my entire girl with white to match the boy, her arms, legs, and her head. And then adding her little nose detail, her eyebrows, and her mouth. And look at her, she's adorable. This next cookie is 3 light bulbs. The easiest way if you're a beginner to do this is to outline and flood each light bulb separately, letting each light bulb crust over before moving on to the next part. I wanted to do this quickly, so what I'm doing is I'm outlining each light bulb entirely. Having outline next to outline helps me to flood in each area and helps prevent the flood from flowing into the light bulb next to it. Again, the best way to do this would be to do each area separate and let them all crust before moving on. So now I'm filling in this top bulb with my pink flood icing, and if you remember from the other pink I've used, it's the same bag. It's a little thick, so I'm having to scribe it, but it all works out. Then I'm using white to add highlight to the light bulb, and the white is a flood icing as well. If you want flood to blend in with flood perfectly, you use 2 floods. If you were to use an outline white, it could work, but it just wouldn't blend as smoothly as it does when you're doing flood to flood. And here you see I'm doing each color, one right after the other with flood. They do not keep as much separation when you do it this way, but as long as you have nice outlines between each color, it will work if you're careful. I'm filling in this white section with my white outline icing, and then I'm going to go and scribe them smooth. I'm using outline icing because it does scribe smooth pretty easily, and also flood would most likely crater in these small areas, and I'm also doing them right next to other wet icing, so if I were to flood this immediately after, I would definitely lose definition. And voila, there's our Christmas light bulbs. This next gingerbread house cookie is a lot of brown marker etching on it because I started to decorate it a certain way and didn't like it, scratched off the icing and redrew my design. I've used blue outline icing and just scraped it with a flat, you can use a knife or a boo-boo stick, a paintbrush, whatever, just to give the windows this blue background. Then I'm using brown outline icing to create the window panes, outlining this entire cookie with brown, even though the top part will be red. You can outline the top part that is going to be red if you'd like as well. But to save time, I'm just using all brown. I'm flooding in this bottom section with my brown flood icing, and then I will use my scribe tool to flatten everything out. Be really careful around the windows not to overflow so that you keep your window shape. I allowed the bottom section to crust over before moving on to the red roof line. I'm being very careful again around these windows not to flood into the window. And I've kind of overflowed purposefully on top of the brown to give that roof a little definition of being on top of the house. Flooding in the door with white flood icing and then creating an outline to square up the door. I created a little windowsill above the door with white outline icing, and then I'm using green outline icing and creating a little wreath with the icing itself. There's no right or wrong way to do this, and actually my green icing is a little too thin for this, but I made it work. Then I'm using some red outline to create little dots and some pink outline to make my wreath. It doesn't have to be perfect. Again, I'm making a large windowsill on this bottom window because I'm going to make it like a planter with greenery, red and pink dots inside. I'm outlining the bottom of my roof line with some thick outline icing to create the look of snow, and using my green, red, and white to create greenery in these little flower boxes I've designed. You can leave this part out altogether. Then I use some pink to fill in the little flowers, just doing some definition on these window ledges. Adding some red back in here. Then I'm using some white outline to create the look of snow. And then I'll go with the white and create the look of door panels and a doorknob on my door to finish this part off. At this point, you can be done with this cookie. It looks cute the way it is, but I'm always a little extra, so I'll show you how I spruced it up. I just used red outline icing and a dry paintbrush to brush on icing on top of my crusted over roof line. Then I took my white flood again and made the outline just a little bit thicker so that I could do a brush embroidery technique here to create the look of snow. This is just a dry paintbrush that I'm brushing upwards from this white outline to create a snowy look. And then I also ended up having to scrape off and reapply my windowsill ledges on this top part of the roof just so I could get in and do this brush embroidery technique here. So if you were to do this part, I would say don't do all your window ledge details yet. Just go ahead and do this, and then you can add in those window ledge details because it's hard to do once those ledges are on the cookie. And as you can see, it does look more like snow with this brush embroidery technique that I'm using. So I really like the look of it. I hope this video has helped you with your cookie decorating skills, and I would love for you to tag me or DM me with your photos of the cookies that you made. I will link the cutter shops as well as the products I use down below in my description. And once again, thank you so much for following along.